I always thought time would make that old house smaller. You know how when you go back to your childhood places, they never seem as big as you remember? But when I pulled up that cracked driveway again 30 years later, it still looked just as tall, just as stubborn, and just as full of secrets as the day my dad sold it. The porch leaned like it had been holding its breath for decades. The same giant oak still shadowed the front yard, and the wind still whistled through the gutters like an old friend trying to say hello. I got out of the truck, stood there for a long minute, and just let the nostalgia hit me. The place wasn't perfect, not even close. Paint peeled off the siding like sunburn, the windows were fogged, and the grass was about a foot taller than my patience, but it was mine again, my childhood home. And the best part, it was outside the HOA. That's what sealed the deal. I had no plans to join the perfectly coordinated neighborhood watch across the road, where everyone's mailbox matched like they'd been cloned in a factory. Nope. My house sat just a few feet past their sacred border, the last free house on the block, and I intended to keep it that way. The first few days were good. I fixed up the porch swing, scrubbed decades of grime off the front door, and watched the sunset from the same steps where I'd once left muddy sneakers after football practice. Everything felt right again. Then one morning, as I was hosing off the driveway, I heard the faint electric hum of a golf cart approaching. That sound would go on to haunt me. Rolling up in a pastel-colored cart with chrome wheels was a woman who looked like she'd been born in a board meeting. Perfectly pressed blazer, pearl necklace, and the kind of sunglasses that said she didn't ask for permission, she gave it. She smiled, the way salespeople do when they're about to sell you something you don't need. "Good morning," she chirped. "You must be the new homeowner. I'm Denise, the president of the Homeowners Association." I leaned on the hose, trying not to laugh. "Well, morning to you too, but this place isn't part of your HOA. Her smile twitched just slightly like a crack in glass. "Oh, I'm aware, but we consider this area part of our extended community." "Extended community," I repeated, raising an eyebrow. "That sound like marketing talk for we wish we owned your land." She laughed politely, but her tone shifted. "There's been some discussion about aligning your property with the HOA's aesthetic. You'll be receiving an information packet soon." "I think I'll pass," I said. "My porch is allergic to committees." Her eyes narrowed behind those sunglasses. "That's unfortunate. We prefer everyone to be part of our improvement efforts." Then she turned her cart around and zipped off like a drone on a mission. I didn't think much of it until 2 days later when I found an envelope taped to my mailbox. It had the HOA logo printed in gold, like it was something out of the White House. Inside was a notice of noncompliance. Noncompliance with what? Breathing. The letter listed 3 supposed violations. Unapproved exterior renovation. Mailbox not up to community standard. Excessive lawn growth. I stared at it, half laughing, half ready to lose my mind. My lawn wasn't even visible from their side of the street. My mailbox had survived hurricanes, and as far as I knew, the HOA didn't have jurisdiction over nostalgia. I called the number on the letter, and of course, Denise answered. "Denise speaking," she said, "all business." "Yeah, hi, this is the guy you tried to recruit for your secret society," I said. "Got your letter, cute stationery, by the way. Only problem is I'm not in your HOA." There was a pause long enough for me to imagine her eyes narrowing. "Oh, not yet," she said. Click, she hung up. That phrase stuck in my head, not yet, like she knew something I didn't. The next morning, my curb was freshly painted with the HOA logo. I hadn't done it. My property line was clearly a few feet beyond their border. Someone had crossed it overnight. That's when I started getting this weird feeling in my gut, the kind that whispers they're not done with you. That weekend, I went down to the county office to double-check the maps. Sure enough, my house was marked outside the HOA, a few feet of freedom, but the clerk frowned when I mentioned Denise. "Oh yeah," he said. "She's been here a few times this week, said something about filing an annexation request." I blinked. Annexation, as in taking my property. He nodded. "Technically, if enough board members vote, they can request to expand the HOA boundary. It's rare, but possible." Possible, that word hit like a cold gust of air. When I drove home that evening, a brand new "Welcome to Pine Ridge HOA" sign was staked at the end of my driveway. That's when I realized they weren't asking me to join, they were planning to force me. The "Welcome to Pine Ridge HOA" sign glared at me like a bad joke. Someone had planted it right beside my mailbox, just far enough onto my property to make the message clear they weren't bluffing. I got out of my truck and stared at it for a solid minute, wondering if I was on some kind of reality show. No cameras, no crew, just me, a pile of mail, and a group of suburban vigilantes declaring war on my front yard. I yanked the sign out of the ground and tossed it in the trash. That night, I poured myself a beer, sat on the porch, and told myself it was over. I was wrong. The next morning, I woke to the sound of a leaf blower, not mine, someone else. When I looked outside, 3 people in matching HOA polos were standing in my yard, trimming hedges that weren't even overgrown. I stepped outside, trying to stay calm. "Morning," one of them said, cheerful as a weatherman. "We're just helping you get up to community standards." I raised my voice over the roar of the leaf blower. "Community standards don't apply here. This isn't your community." They all looked at each other like I'd just insulted their religion. The oldest of the 3 shrugged. "Ma'am says you're pending membership." "Pending? I didn't apply for anything." He shrugged again, then pointed across the street. There she was, Denise, standing beside her golf cart, sipping iced coffee like a queen surveying her conquered lands. I dropped my rake and stormed across the street. "Hey, call off your landscaping army," I said. "They're trespassing." She didn't even blink. "Oh, they're just doing what's best for the neighborhood. You'll thank us once you see how much better your curb appeal looks." "Lady, I don't need your curb appeal. I need you off my lawns." She smirked. "The board has already voted to include your property in our community map. It's just a matter of paperwork now." "That's not how land works," I snapped. "Oh, you'd be surprised," she said, turning away like she'd already won. That night, I sat in my truck under the oak tree, staring at the house and wondering what kind of person gets power-hungry over flower beds and mailboxes. But the more I thought about it, the more I realized people like Denise lived for this. Rules were her currency. Control was her oxygen. The next morning, my mailbox flag was broken off and someone had spray-painted the words HOA member on the curb. I actually laughed. The audacity was impressive. But my laughter died when I found another envelope taped to my door. This one wasn't a notice, it was a bill. HOA dues, $375 past due. I called the number again, half amused, half fuming. Denise picked up on the first ring. "Denise, it's me again," I said. "I got your bill, real cute, but you can't charge me for an HOA I'm not part of." "Oh, that's just a preliminary invoice," she said smoothly. "Once annexation is finalized, it'll be retroactive." "Annexation is illegal without consent," I said. "You can't just grab someone's land because you're bored." Her tone sharpened. "You might want to check your deeds, sir. We've submitted a boundary correction to the county." Click. She hung up again. I didn't sleep that night. I spent hours digging through my documents, deeds, surveys, the original plat map from 1987. Everything clearly showed that my property was outside the HOA. Still, I printed copies, highlighted sections, and put them in a folder labeled the war file. By Friday, the situation turned from annoying to absurd. A notice appeared on my door claiming that non-compliant residents could face fines or even lien action. That was the moment I realized they weren't bluffing anymore. So I went to the city office again. The clerk recognized me and sighed, "Back again, huh?" "Yeah," I said, "apparently I live in occupied territory now." He flipped through a few files, then frowned. "You're not gonna like this. They actually filed for a zoning inclusion under community consistency. It's pending approval." I leaned on the counter. "And how long does that take?" "A week or 2. You can contest it, but you'll need to show up at their board hearing." A board hearing in their clubhouse with their rules perfect. That night, I got another visit, this time from a neighbor named Tim, a quiet guy who'd lived there for years. He looked nervous standing on my porch. "Listen," he said in a low voice, "I shouldn't be here, but you should know Denise is serious. She's been telling everyone you're refusing to comply with community safety standards." "Safety standards? What is my lawn a biohazard?" He shook his head. "She's planning to file a nuisance complaint to get the city involved. Once that happens, it won't matter if you're in the HOA or not, they'll have leverage." I thanked him and watched him walk away, guilt written all over his face. That night, I sat in the living room surrounded by old blueprints, property maps, and a growing sense of defiance. I wasn't going to let some clipboard-wielding dictator take over my childhood home. I just didn't realize how far she was willing to go next. By the time the weekend hit, I was running on coffee, fury, and whatever leftover stubbornness the old house had passed down to me. Every morning I half expected to find Denise sitting on my porch with a clipboard and a smile that could curdle milk. Sunday morning didn't disappoint. I stepped outside to grab the paper and nearly tripped over a bright orange stake hammered into my lawn. Attached to it was a laminated sign that read, "Future HOA Maintenance Zone." I just stood there for a minute trying to process it. The audacity was Olympic level. My first thought was to yank it out and launch it into orbit, but instead I snapped a photo. Evidence. Because clearly this was getting ridiculous enough that I might need to call a lawyer or the press. I didn't even make it back inside before Denise's golf cart hummed up the driveway. "Morning," she sang, wearing that same smug smile. "I see you got our notice." "Yeah," I said, crossing my arms. "And if I ever need landscaping advice from a dictatorship, I'll let you know." She tilted her head. "We're just formalizing the boundaries for future integration. It's already been approved by the board." "Lady, your board doesn't rule this property. I've got the paperwork to prove it." Her tone softened like she was talking to a child. "Oh, I'm sure you think that, but paperwork has a funny way of getting outdated. You'd be amazed how fast things change once the county updates a map." Then she gave me this little smirk, turned her cart around, and rolled off like she'd just declared war and didn't need to lift a finger to win it. That smirk haunted me all day. By Monday, it wasn't just the sign. They'd put up a community beautification project barrier at the end of the street, and guess whose house was now listed as Phase 1? Workers were trimming trees and repainting curbs, all while the HOA volunteers stood around with clipboards, nodding like generals overseeing a battle plan. I decided enough was enough. That afternoon, I drove to the county assessor's office with my war folder. The clerk was an older guy named Jerry who looked like he'd seen his fair share of HOA nonsense. I spread my maps and documents across the counter like a poker player going all in. "Jerry, I need you to confirm something for me," I said. "Am I crazy, or does this line clearly show my property outside of Pine Ridge HOA?" He leaned over, squinting through his glasses. "You're right, you're about 15 feet outside the boundary, always have been." "Perfect, then why are they trying to annex me?" He sighed. "Because they filed for a zoning adjustment last week. Technically, they can propose to expand their jurisdiction if they claim it benefits the community's infrastructure." "Infrastructure?" I laughed. "This isn't a power grid, it's a bunch of retired hall monitors with shrubs." He chuckled, but his tone dropped. "I'd contest it if I were you. You'll need to show up at their hearing Wednesday night." "Wouldn't miss it," I said. When I got home, someone had left another envelope on my door. This one wasn't taped, it was nailed. I yanked it down and tore it open. Inside was a letter signed by the HOA Board of Directors. "This is your final notice. Failure to comply with HOA policies may result in fines, liens, or forced community arbitration." I had to read it twice. Forced arbitration. These people really thought they could drag me into their kangaroo court. So I started preparing for Wednesday like it was game day. I scanned every document, made copies, and printed color maps with highlighted borders. I even brought out the old photo album my dad had kept, pictures of him and me fixing that same porch in 1987, years before the HOA even existed. Proof that this house had a history longer than their bylaws. By Wednesday evening, I walked into the Pine Ridge clubhouse like a man walking into enemy territory. Everyone stopped talking when I entered. Rows of matching polo shirts and judgmental stares. Denise sat at the head of the table like the queen of conformity. "Ah, Mr. Mason," she said sweetly, "so glad you could join us. Please have a seat." I stayed standing. "Let's make this quick. You're trespassing on private property and filing false zoning claims. I've got maps, deeds, and legal proof that my land is outside your jurisdiction." She smiled wider. "Our attorney disagrees." An older man in a suit stood up beside her, holding a briefcase like it contained the 10 Commandments. He cleared his throat. "Under Section 14C of the Pine Ridge Charter, the board reserves the right to adjust boundaries in pursuit of community safety and uniformity." I raised my eyebrows. "Community safety? You're painting curbs, not defusing bombs." A few people in the back tried not to laugh. Denise shot them a glare that could freeze water. Then I pulled out my ace, the city's official plat map, certified and stamped. I slapped it on the table. "Here's the actual legal boundary. You move 1 inch over that line, you're in violation of property law." The room went silent. Denise's smirk faltered for the first time. The attorney looked at the map, frowned, and whispered something to her. Her cheeks flushed pink. I leaned forward just enough to make my point. "You want to keep testing my patience? Go ahead. But next time you send one of your people onto my lawn, I'll have them arrested for trespassing." Then I turned and walked out, leaving the whole room frozen. That night, I thought maybe I'd finally scared them off. But when I woke up the next morning, the HOA sign was gone, replaced with something worse. A bright red notice from the city. Property under review for code violations. And right at the bottom, in neat handwriting, it read, "Complaint filed by Pine Ridge HOA." When I saw that bright red notice pinned to my front door, my stomach dropped like I'd just missed a step on a dark staircase. Property under review for code violations. The words glared at me, official and cold, stamped with the city's logo, and right underneath, handwritten in a neat little flourish, "Complaint filed by Pine Ridge HOA." It was 6:45 a.m. on a Thursday, and my coffee hadn't even kicked in yet. I peeled the paper off the door, stormed back inside, and sat at my kitchen table staring at it. Code violations. For what? My house had passed inspection when I bought it. The only thing violating the neighborhood was Denise's need for control. By 10 a.m., I heard tires crunching on the driveway. A white city vehicle parked out front, and out stepped a man in a tan uniform, clipboard in hand. He looked like he'd seen one too many angry homeowners in his career. "Morning," he said, polite but cautious. "You Mr. Mason." "Oh, yep, you the code guy." "That's right. Got a report from the Pine Ridge Homeowners Association about unsafe wiring, unapproved exterior work, and possible drainage issues." I almost laughed. "Drainage issues? You're standing on the only hill in the county that doesn't flood." He shrugged. "Hey, I just checked the boxes. Mind if I take a look around?" "Knock yourself out," I said, following him as he walked the perimeter. He took a few photos, scribbled notes, and frowned at the porch like it had personally offended him. Then, right on cue, I heard the familiar hum of that cursed golf cart. Denise rolled up, wearing her usual pastel armor and fake smile. "Oh, good, you're already here," she said sweetly to the inspector, ignoring me completely. "We've had so many concerns from neighbors about this property, such an eyesore for our lovely community." I bit back a sarcastic comment. The inspector gave me an awkward look. "Ma'am, I'm just doing a standard review." "Oh, of course," she said, with that syrupy tone that hides a knife underneath. "We just want to ensure everyone is following the same standards of safety and beauty, you understand." I crossed my arms. "Funny how you're suddenly concerned about my house when it's not even part of your HOA. Her smile didn't falter for now. That phrase again, those two words that made my blood pressure rise 10 points on the spot, for now. The inspector did his walkthrough and handed me a yellow copy of his notes. "You'll get an official letter next week," he said. "If anything needs correcting, you'll have 30 days. As soon as he left, Denise gave me this smug little nod and drove off like she'd just won another round. I called the city that afternoon and explained everything. How the HOA had been harassing me, how they'd planted signs, painted my curb, even filed fake complaints. The clerk on the phone listened patiently, then said, "Sir, if they submitted the complaint as part of a zoning proposal, it'll stay open until the review is complete. There's not much we can do until then." So that was it. I was officially on the city's radar because of a power-hungry neighbor with too much time and a clipboard fetish. But here where things took a turn. That evening, I decided to mow the lawn, mostly to blow off steam. About halfway through, I noticed 3 of my neighbors standing near the sidewalk watching. They weren't HOA volunteers, just regular folks who lived nearby. One of them, an older man named Frank, waved me over. "Hey, Mason," he said quietly, "heard what they're doing to you." "Yeah," I said, "apparently owning property is now a crime." He chuckled. "You're not the first. Denise's crew tried pulling the same thing on me 2 years ago, claimed my shed was too close to the fence line. I ended up in small claims court over it." "Did you win?" He grinned. "Wouldn't be telling you this if I didn't." Then another neighbor chimed in. She bullied the Browns into joining last year, told them their home insurance would get canceled if they didn't comply. Total bluff. That's when the light bulb went off in my head. I wasn't just one guy fighting an HOA, I was the next target in a long list of people who'd given in out of exhaustion. Denise was running a one-woman intimidation campaign, and it had worked for years. Not anymore. That night, I dug into public records. Pine Ridge HOA had filed a dozen nuisance complaints in the past 5 years. Most got dismissed quietly, but 2 had escalated into property disputes. The same attorney's name showed up every time. By midnight, I had everything I needed: proof of harassment, false reports, and a pattern of abuse. I emailed it all to a local news reporter who covered housing issues. The subject line was simple: local HOA bullying homeowners off their land. The next morning, I woke up to find something new taped to my mailbox. Another letter, this one handwritten. You don't know who you're messing with. Drop this before it gets ugly. No HOA logo, no signature, just thread in black ink. I stared at it for a long moment, then smiled. Because if Denise wanted ugly, she was about to get it. The night of the HOA meeting, I pulled into the clubhouse parking lot feeling like I was walking into enemy territory. The place looked like it was hosting a wedding, string lights, catered trays, even a podium set up with the HOA's ridiculous logo, Pine Ridge, where unity meets order. I could already feel the hypocrisy dripping off those words. I walked in wearing my old denim jacket, the same one I used to wear as a teenager when I'd bike down this street and sneak into that abandoned clubhouse with my friends. Funny how life circles back, except now I wasn't sneaking in, I was about to stir things up. Inside, Karen spotted me immediately. She was dressed like she was running for Congress, navy suit, pearls, and that tight smile that never reached her eyes. Mr. Daniels, she greeted loudly so the room would hear, we're so glad you decided to finally come to the table. Her tone carried the same smug undertone as a cat who thinks it's cornered the mouse. I just nodded, grabbed a plastic cup of water, and sat in the back row. The room went quiet as she started the meeting, reading from her clipboard like it was the Constitution itself. First on the agenda, she said, her voice sharp, is the matter of noncompliance from the Daniels property on Maple Ridge Lane. Every head turned to look at me. You could practically hear the anticipation buzzing. I leaned back in my chair, crossed my arms, and waited for the circus to start. Karen clicked to a slide on the projector. It showed a photo of my front yard, the same one I'd just rebuilt, except the image had big red circles around my mailbox, my fence line, and get this, even my oak tree. She said, as you can see, Mr. Daniels has made several modifications that do not align with the Pine Ridge aesthetic standards. We've issued 3 notices and received no cooperation. Someone muttered, he's not even a member. Another whispered, doesn't matter, he's still in the area. That's when I stood up, calmly, slowly, and said, you're absolutely right, I'm not a member. That's because my home, my property, was never annexed into this HOA. It's outside your jurisdiction. The room murmured. Karen's smile faltered for the first time. That's a matter of interpretation, she said quickly. Our bylaws clearly state. Your bylaws, I interrupted, don't apply to me. And before you try to interpret your way around that, maybe you should look at the original county records. I did. I pulled a folder from my jacket and slapped it onto the nearest table, every head craned. This house was built in 1973. Your HOA was formed in 1988. The property line stops 50 feet short of my driveway, so whatever imaginary power trip you're on, it ends at my mailbox. The silence that followed was beautiful. Karen blinked. Then she did what all HOA presidents do when caught. She got louder. That's irrelevant, she said, voice tightening. You're part of this community and your property affects everyone's value. You benefit from our upkeep, our landscaping, our rules, so you should contribute. Oh, I contribute, I said. I just don't write checks to dictatorships. That earned a few quiet laughs. Even one of the board members smirked before Karen shot him a death glare. She turned back to me and hissed, Mr. Daniels, if you continue to ignore our authority, we will have no choice but to pursue legal action. I picked up my folder, slid it under my arm, and smiled. Then I guess I'll see you in court, but something tells me your HOA dues won't cover that loss. Then I walked out, leaving a room full of stunned faces and one very red HOA president. The next morning, I thought that was the end of it, but oh, I underestimated how deep their obsession ran. When I went outside, my driveway was blocked, not by one car, but 3, 2 sedans and a pickup, all parked diagonally like they were staging an intervention. And in the middle of them, standing with her clipboard again, was Karen. She said, Mr. Daniels, since you're refusing to comply, we've decided to place a lien on your property until you do. I laughed. I couldn't help it. You can't place a lien on something you don't own jurisdiction over. Her smile was cold. We'll see about that. I called my lawyer that afternoon. He was a quiet guy, but the way he chuckled when I explained what was happening told me everything. Let me handle it, he said. I've dealt with these HOA zealots before. Still, I couldn't shake the feeling that this wasn't just about property lines anymore. Karen wasn't trying to enforce rules. She was trying to make an example out of me, and people like her, they didn't stop until they lost big. That night, I sat on my porch, looking at my restored home under the porch light, the one my dad had hung when I was a kid. I thought about how peaceful it used to be here, before the board meetings, the notices, the shouting. Then my phone buzzed, a message from my neighbor. You might want to check the HOA page, they just posted something about you. When I opened it, my stomach turned. There it was, a full post on the Pine Ridge HOA Facebook page. A photo of my house captioned, "Resident refuses community standards, legal action pending." They were going public. And that's when I knew this wasn't going to stop until I made it stop. Because they thought they were taking on a homeowner. But what they didn't realize was, they were picking a fight with the one person who knew every corner of this neighborhood better than they ever would. Next part, let's just say things were about to get very public on my terms. By the next morning, the entire neighborhood was buzzing. I couldn't even take out the trash without catching people whispering or pretending not to stare. The HOA's Facebook post had done exactly what Karen wanted, painted me as the neighborhood rebel who refused to follow the rules. Thing was, they didn't know I had my own way of fighting back. I wasn't just angry, I was strategic, and I wasn't about to let them control the story. So I took a photo, one of me standing in front of my restored home, smiling, holding a proudly independent sign I made out of scrap wood. Then I posted it on the same neighborhood page with a caption that read, "Bought my childhood home, restored it with my own hands. HOA wants to claim it now, not happening." Within an hour, the comments exploded. Some people cheered me on, others called me stubborn, and then there were the quiet likes from folks I knew were too scared to speak up against the board publicly. That's when I got a message request from someone named Michael. The name rang a bell, but I couldn't place it. "Hey," he wrote, "you don't know me well, but I'm on the HOA board. Off the record, I think you're right, and you're not the only one they've tried this with." Now that got my attention. We met later that night at a diner off Route 7, the kind of place that still serves coffee in chipped mugs. He was in his 30s, quiet, polite, the kind of guy who probably joined the HOA just to help with landscaping, never realizing he'd walked into a power cult. He leaned forward, lowered his voice, and said, "Karen's been overreaching for years. She's annexed properties she has no authority over, fudged signatures on boundary petitions, threatened lawsuits she can't win, but no one ever fights back because she scares them." I let out a small laugh. Well, she picked the wrong childhood home to mess with. Michael nodded. "She's got files, real detailed ones. Photos, documents, notes about people. She keeps them in the clubhouse filing cabinet. Locked, but if someone were to see those files, it'd show everything she's done wrong." Now I'm not the kind of guy to go snooping around someone's office, but this was different. This wasn't gossip, it was a pattern of intimidation, and I had to expose it. I told Michael, if she's breaking laws, I'm not stopping at Facebook. I'll go to the county, the papers, anyone who will listen. He hesitated, then said, "Just be careful, she doesn't like losing control." 2 days later, things escalated. I woke up to find a bright orange sign staked in my front yard, "Violation Property." It had the HOA logo stamped on it like they were the local government. That was it, no more warnings, no more playing nice. I grabbed my phone and started recording a video. The camera framed the house behind me as I said, "So apparently if you buy your own home and fix it up with your own money, an HOA can just stroll in and say it's theirs now. But guess what? My property isn't theirs and it never will be." I posted it online and it blew up. Thousands of views, hundreds of comments, even a local news reporter me asking for an interview. Suddenly the HOA wasn't the only one with a voice. That same evening, Karen showed up at my gate again, furious. "You're making a spectacle of yourself," she snapped. "This kind of attention hurts our entire community." I smiled. "Oh, you mean it hurts your controls?" She jabbed her finger toward my camera, still filming on the porch railing. "Turn that off." I folded my arms. "Nope, not this time." She glared, realizing the power dynamic had shifted. For once, I wasn't the one on the defensive, she was, and she knew every word she said could end up online. "Fine," she said through clenched teeth. "If you won't listen, we'll escalate this legally. You'll regret making an enemy out of the Pine Ridge HOA." I laughed. "No, Karen, I think the Pine Ridge HOA is about to regret making an enemy out of me." When she stormed off, Michael texted me again. "You've really got her rattled, be ready, she's going to pull something desperate." And he was right, because that night as I sat on my porch scrolling through the flood of supportive comments, I noticed something strange, headlights idling across the street facing my home. They sat there for a minute, then turned off and disappeared. By morning, I found tire marks in the dirt near my mailbox, and the lid of my trash can ripped clean off. Someone had been snooping around. And suddenly, the neighborhood war wasn't just public, it was getting personal. Whatever Karen was planning next, it was clear she was done playing by the rules. But neither was I. Because if she wanted to take this fight beyond the HOA bylaws, I was more than ready to meet her there. Next part, let's just say the storm was coming, and when it hit, every secret this neighborhood had buried was about to be dug up for the world to see. By that next morning, the calm of my street was gone. The same neighbors who used to wave at me when I mowed the lawn now avoided eye contact. The HOA's smear campaign had reached full throttle, and Karen was pulling strings like she was orchestrating a neighborhood coup. But I wasn't planning to hide anymore. That week, Michael, the insider board member, called me again. His voice was low, almost nervous. "She's planning something big," he said. "Karen's rewriting the HOA boundary map. She's trying to retroactively add your property into the association so she can legally fine you." I froze. "She can't just redraw lines, that's fraud." "She's done it before," he said. 3 houses at the end of Oak Street got pulled in last year, nobody challenged it. "Then it's time someone did." I had a plan forming before we even hung up. If Karen wanted a fight, I was going to give her one on camera with evidence and witnesses, but first I needed proof. Michael agreed to meet me that evening at the clubhouse after everyone left. We parked a block away, waiting for the last few HOA cars to drive off. The air was cool, the kind of silence that hums before trouble. He handed me a small flash drive. "Everything's on here," he whispered. "Scanned documents, emails, the falsified maps, even signed petitions that don't match the real owner's signatures." I took it carefully, realizing what this meant. Karen hadn't just been power tripping, she'd been running a shadow operation, bending the HOA charter for years. But before I could say a word, headlights turned onto the street. Karen's silver SUV rolled slowly toward the clubhouse and my stomach dropped. "Hide," Michael hissed, ducking behind the shrubs. We crouched as Karen parked and got out, talking on her phone. "Yes, I've got it handled," she said, packing near the door. "We'll file the annexation notice Monday, he won't know what hit him." My pulse pounded in my ears, that was all I needed to hear. Proof, plan, and motive caught live. I recorded the whole thing from my phone, careful not to make a sound. When she finally left, we slipped away quietly. Michael looked shaken. "You have no idea how long she's been doing this," he said. "You're not just fighting for your home, man, you're fighting for everyone who's ever been bullied by her." That hit me harder than I expected, because deep down, I knew he was right. This wasn't just my fight anymore, it was about every homeowner who'd ever felt powerless against people who thought paperwork made them gods. The next morning, I uploaded a new video. Calm, clear, direct, I didn't shout, I didn't accuse, I simply showed the evidence. "Here, what happens when you let one person in charge of a community think she owns it," I said to the camera. "This is Pine Ridge HOA. These are falsified maps, fake petitions, and proof of property theft under the disguise of regulation." I hit upload, and by noon it went viral. Local reporters showed up at my gate. County inspectors called me asking for details. Even the mayor's office left a message. The HOA scrambled. Karen called an emergency board meeting that evening, and the whole neighborhood buzzed with speculation. I didn't go, but I didn't have to. Someone live-streamed it. Karen looked cornered. "These accusations are baseless," she barked, voice trembling. "This man has twisted our intentions." But then Michael stood up from the board table, calm, steady, holding a folder in his hand. "You mean these documents?" he said, "because I was there when you ordered them printed." The room erupted. People started shouting, demanding her resignation. And then, like a movie scene, 2 county officials walked through the doors mid-meeting. Someone must have forwarded them the video. They walked straight to the podium, announced an investigation into HOA misconduct, and served Karen with a subpoena. She froze, mouth open, every ounce of confidence draining from her face. I watched the whole thing unfold on my phone from my porch, sipping my coffee. After weeks of being their target, it was poetic to see justice do its quiet work. But I wasn't done yet. Because while the investigation was underway, Karen made one last desperate move. She filed a civil complaint personally, not as the HOA, claiming I had defamed her online. That's when I smiled, because I already knew what was coming next. I'd been holding one piece of evidence in reserve, a recording from the night she threatened to make an example out of me in front of other board members. It wasn't just bullying, it was intent. My lawyer called me that evening. "You've got her cornered," he said. "Once this goes to court, she's finished." And for the first time in weeks, I felt peace. Real, deep peace, not because I'd won, but because I'd finally stood my ground against someone who thought she could rewrite the world with a clipboard and fake authority. That night, as the sun dipped behind the trees, I sat on my porch again. Same house, same oak tree, same breeze I remembered as a kid. Except this time, I wasn't just the boy who used to dream here, I was the man who took it back. The courthouse smelled like polished wood and stale air conditioning. I'd been there before for parking tickets, but this time it was different. This time it wasn't about a fine, it was about everything. My home, my name, my peace. Karen sat across the aisle from me, flanked by two HOA lawyers who looked like they charged by the second. She was wearing her signature navy blue suit and that same confident smirk she used when she thought she'd already won. I didn't have an army of attorneys, just my lawyer, David, a quiet, silver-haired man who didn't talk much but smiled like someone who already knew the ending of a movie you were just starting. The judge entered, everyone rose, and the trial began. Karen's lawyer went first, painting me as a disruptive homeowner who refused to follow community ethics. He talked about order, unity, and shared responsibility. All the buzzwords that sound noble until you see what they really mean: control. When he finished, the judge looked unimpressed. Then David stood up, calm as a breeze. "Your Honor," he said, "before we continue, I'd like to submit Exhibit A." He handed the bailiff a flash drive. The judge pressed play on the monitor, and there it was, the video I'd recorded outside the clubhouse. Karen's voice, clear as day: "We'll file the annexation notice Monday. He won't know what hit him." The room went dead silent. Karen's smirk vanished. David didn't raise his voice, didn't grandstand. He simply said, "This case isn't about community standards, Your Honor. It's about attempted property fraud and intimidation. My client doesn't owe dues. He owes an apology, one he's never going to get." For the next hour, evidence piled up. The falsified maps, the duplicate signatures, the threatening notices, the photos of the fake violation signs on my lawn. Every piece told the same story: a group of people who thought they could rewrite boundaries because no one had ever stood up to them. Then came my turn to speak. I took the stand, hands steady, voice calm. "I bought that home because it was where I grew up," I said. "Where my dad taught me how to hammer a nail, where my mom planted the first rose bush in the yard. I spent months restoring it, every board, every window, every piece of memory. And then someone told me I couldn't just live there unless I followed their rules, but those rules weren't laws. They were opinions backed by threats." The judge nodded slightly, taking notes. Karen's lawyer tried to object, claiming I was making it emotional, but the judge waved him off. "It's his home," she said. "He's allowed to be emotional." When I stepped down, David gave me a small nod. It was the first time I felt like this whole nightmare might finally end. After a brief recess, the judge returned with her decision. "Based on the evidence presented," she began, "it's clear that the Pine Ridge HOA, under its current leadership, acted beyond its legal boundaries. The plaintiff's claims are dismissed. Furthermore, this court orders a full audit of the HOA's annexation records and recommends Karen Whitmore's removal as president pending investigation." Karen went pale, her mouth opened but no sound came out. The gavel came down like thunder, and just like that, it was over. Outside the courthouse, the news cameras were waiting. Reporters shouted questions as I stepped down the marble steps, but I didn't say much. Just one thing: some homes belong to more than just land, they belong to memories, and those aren't for sale. By evening, the HOA's Facebook page was gone. The sign at the entrance to Pine Ridge had been taken down. The county froze their operations pending the audit. 2 weeks later, I got a letter in the mail, handwritten, from Michael. It read, "You changed more than you know. People are finally speaking up. They're forming a new association, one with transparency, volunteers, and no dictators. Thanks for reminding everyone what community really means." I folded the letter and tucked it into the same drawer where I kept my dad's old hammer, because somehow it felt like they belonged together. That evening, I stood in my yard, watching the sunset spill across the shingles I'd replaced myself. The oak tree swayed, the same one I used to climb when life was simple. I thought about everything: the battles, the nights I almost gave up, the people who stood by me quietly when it mattered most. And then I smiled because I realized something. You can rebuild walls, repaint fences, or rewrite bylaws, but you can't own a person's history. You can't fence in their freedom. That's something no HOA, no clipboard, and no Karen will ever understand. As I locked the front door for the night, I looked back at my home one last time and said quietly, "Welcome home, kids, you made it back." The porch light flickered on, and for the first time in years, it finally felt like peace. Every HOA has a story on HOA Headaches. You'll hear the ones they tried to bury. Subscribe today.